Hi, I'm Larry Foster, Senior Director of Supplier Quality with Illumina. I'd like to welcome the BSMA members attending this presentation on virtual auditing. I want to apologize, Gary Workman is unable to attend today, so it will be a solo presentation, just myself. And so with that, let's get into it. So a little background on Illumina. The company was founded in 1998. Our CEO is Francis D'Souza. We are based in San Diego, California. We went public in 2000. We have about 8,000 employees and 22 offices globally. The mission and vision for Illumina is really to improve the human health by unlocking the power of the genome. The picture here gives you a nice representation of those 22 global offices, but it also starts to set the stage for virtual audits, right? So we're, as a global company, we have a global sourcing strategy, and hence, anytime we're touching our suppliers, adding new suppliers, having a regional approach to managing those suppliers, whether it's out of our Singapore facility, our US facilities up in the UK, that presents, typically we would travel all over the world. And now with the virtual, you have challenges with languages and bandwidth and access. So I think this is, this topic in the presentation today is pretty appropriate. And I'm sure most of you attending today have similar challenges with the global scope of your supply chain. And so today's meeting, or rather presentation, we'll just start by setting the stage, right? Why virtual audits? We'll then get into some of the scope, what type of audits that really is meant to then get into when we get into the next topic around conducting the virtual audits. There may be some nuances associated with those based on the type and the scope of the audit. And then some closing comments. There's a new normal, right? I think most, if not all of you guys in your companies have talked about when there is a vaccine, when the COVID is at least manageable, what's that going to mean? And in most cases, it's probably not returning back to what we had experienced pre-COVID, right? So virtual audits, setting the stage. Well, the reason we're here is because of the pandemic. It's really, we're manufacturers, most of us, if not all of us, are still making, distributing, and managing product. And so we are accountable for ensuring that the supply chain is there to support those requirements, right? Revenue as well as our customers. We need to ensure that the suppliers continue to provide services and materials. We need to verify they're fit for purpose, but also that then our processes may continue to be compliant. And that's really the balance that we're going to talk about today. And how does the company then continue? We have the mandate of stay at home, at least most of us. Some of you may be working part-time, but also then the social distancing aspects that really then relate to limiting our ability to perform audits on site. Some of those may be our own requirements. Some of those maybe those your companies are a little bit more liberal, or not liberal, but a little bit more open to having people on site, but your suppliers may not be. And so it really needs to be mutual at that point. And so that's what's mandating a lot of this virtual audit activity. And so as far as scope, there's really four types if you put them into the largest buckets. You've got your reevaluation audits. This is around purchasing controls, supplier monitoring, the requirements, right? You've got your critical suppliers. You have them on some reoccurring audit schedule, whether that's at a 1-year interval, 2-year, maybe it's even 3. But these are suppliers you know, and you've already got some history with them. They're in your database, they're on your ASL, and you're just performing that reevaluation activity. The other are for-cause audits. So you've had some nonconformance or some disruption at your facility that has required you to then initiate some correction. What we're going to want to do as they either go through that correction or for sure the effectiveness of that correction is to then verify that they've implemented the improvements, effectively. And so a lot of times these for-cause audits, depending on whether it's a major or minor, you'll go to the supplier's facility and want to do an actual physical verification of that versus something virtual. If they're minor, you may not. You may just want a copy of the updated procedure or something. You have qualification audits. So this is what I was mentioning before, is these are new suppliers, whether it's through new products, whether it's through alternate sourcing, you've got some consolidation effort, but you don't have a history with the supplier. They either came recommended or somebody in development used to use them. And so this is where you need to be a little bit more intimate. It's your first exposure to them. You're going to want to go on site. You're going to want to talk to the people. You're going to want to observe the operation. And these are probably the bigger impacting and types of audits that when you try and do these virtually, they're the most challenging, right? And then you've got your internal and external audits from your registrars. It could be your register for your QMS, SOX, different things like that, some other registered body. But if you think about then the virtual audit, some questions and concerns that go along with the different scope here, one of the things you need to demonstrate is, regardless of virtual or on-site, you have to be able to show that it's the same as an in-person audit, the virtual audit is. It's only using electronic means to remotely obtain audit evidence and evaluate Hi, I'm Larry Foster, Senior Director of Supplier Quality with Illumina. Hi, I'm Larry Foster, Senior Director of Supplier Quality with Illumina. I'd like to welcome the BSMA members attending this presentation on virtual auditing. I want to apologize, Gary Workman is unable to attend today, so it will be a solo presentation, just myself. And so with that, let's get into it. Hi, I'm Larry Foster, Senior Director of Supplier Quality with Illumina. I'd like to welcome the BSMA members attending this presentation on virtual auditing.
Sorry about that, folks. I ran into a technical issue with the work this morning, so just give me a second and I'll try and get it going again. So
Auditing. I want to apologize, Gary Workman is unable to attend today, so it will be a Solo presentation. Just
Dave,
myself.
let's go ahead with the Q&A session and bring Larry on board.
Larry, if you can unmute yourself. So
So a little background on Illumina. The company was founded in 19.
so
I have the slides. If there's a way for me to share them, I can pick up where I left off. Otherwise,
let me.
Great.
either way, I'm fine.
You should be able to share them. I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
For some reason, the video crapped on me. So you should be able to share now.
All right.
Randy knows all about this, right? 5 minutes before the end of my panel, the internet dropped yesterday.
That's true.
It's not fun.
Go ahead and share your screen, Larry.
Let's see. Is there a way to? Let's see.
There we go. Okay, we've got it now, so we can see it.
Okay.
If you want to put in presentation mode,
I did. Are you guys seeing it in presentation mode, or did it come over some other way?
it's coming across in regular mode, not in presentation mode.
Oh, okay. Because it's in presentation mode on my. Are you seeing? Oh, you're seeing the.
The PowerPoint, yeah, but not in presentation mode.
Got it. Let's see. Let's just.
But that's fine. I think we can go ahead. We see everything, maybe more than we need to.
Okay. All right. So I think, yeah, where we left off is, if you're looking at these different types of audits, I mean, the questions and the concerns are going to be to demonstrate that, but just because you're doing it virtually, it's the same as what you would have done in person. And so the regulations, they don't prohibit remote auditing. And there's been a lot of change and update over the years. I mean, we've gotten more and more digital, all of us. And so I think a lot of businesses and companies are already working and migrating more towards either remote or virtual auditing, not to the degree we're doing now, obviously, probably, but, and so, like I said, the regs are adopting. You may find that some auditors have a bias, and so they may come in and question the remote auditing aspects, but there isn't anything regulation-wise, like I mentioned, that prohibits any of us from doing these. What we need to do is we need to be able to make sure that we collect reliable audit evidence and that we have trusted in the audit results, right? And that's really where some of the bias from the external auditors will come, is that they really want you to be able to demonstrate that because of the different medium. Oh, didn't know there. Okay. So conducting the audits itself. So if you just give me a minute here, there's a lot on the slide. We're going to go through the wheel here. We're going to talk about the right first, the actual processes, and then the execution of those audits. So if you think about it on the procedures, the approach Illumina is taking is that we're not treating this as I'll just say a one-time event due to a pandemic. So writing a deviation to our procedures, and then as soon as the pandemic's over, it'll be back to the prior norm. We're looking at this as the new normal. And so we've taken that approach in our procedures we call this more of a geopolitical when we use the definition. And so today it's a global pandemic, but all of us been in supply chain long enough to where we've had to experience very regional types of issues, whether they might be, wars or tsunamis, earthquakes, weather, different things like that. We've all had to deal with those and have to manage the supply chains through a lot of those trials. So building that in and then just having it as a part of your process, I think this makes it that much easier to manage ongoing. If you think about the technology associated with this, This is where, organizationally, you're going to want to understand the capabilities that you have in-house, that your suppliers have, the alignment of those relative to each of these different areas like teleconferencing, videos, cameras, iPhones. Those come into play, especially if you want to do something with documenting the supplier's facility, because now you can't go on site. When you have documents that you want to review, just making sure you have shared folders. Are you going to use PDFs? How are you going to manage those documents, right? And then the bigger piece around all that is the security and the access. And so if you are using shared folders and you want to make sure that they're very either exclusive or you have the access rights so that suppliers, you can't inadvertently have one supplier seeing the documentation from another supplier, and or they start to have access into your own systems. And your ability to store the audit results. So today, if we've got our own databases, maybe your process is manual, you've got a mechanism to do that. But now when you put in these other opportunities here and you're using video that you didn't use previously and cameras and things, you've got to think about storing that tour. It goes back to what I had on the other slide about your auditors when they come in to audit you, is being able to display the evidence, and that the virtual audit is basically the same thing as what previously was an on-site process. Your people and teams are things you're going to want to have to relook at. Training, not so much on the process itself. They're probably already trained and certified auditors, but training on all the technology above. Not everybody's has the same level of technical savvy, right? Some people, you get past an iPhone and Facebook and they really don't, they're lost. And so you've got to make sure your teams are all aware of the different technologies that you're going to employ in these audits, how to use them and how to use them effectively. And then also how to probably shepherd the suppliers and make sure that both of you guys are aligned on what and how to use the different technology aspects here. I would recommend, we are going to conduct many mock audits. This goes to the training as well. You may want to bring the suppliers in for these, but at a minimum, use your teams in-house and you'll do some role playing, right? You'll have one group be the supplier, the other group be the auditor, and to utilize the technology, work through the audit, use the cameras, set up mock tours of your own location. Make sure you play all that out and prove all that out before you then start to do that. You don't want to learn while you're doing the audit. That's just, you're probably setting yourself up to have a difficult time. There's human versus non-human interaction. So during the audit and you're on the video call, you might be talking to the person, the SME at the other end. There'll be other times when you're just looking at the procedure itself and you won't be working with some person or talking with that person. And so just understanding that, how you want to do those interactions. And the bigger thing too that we've noticed in a lot of the audits is the video fatigue. And so if you think about your current on-site process, you'll go there and it'll be anywhere from a half a day, full day, or maybe even a 2-day audit, right? Depending on the scope and what you need to do there. Or you're not going to sit down and set up 2 8-hour video sessions and try and do it the exact same way. That's where the video fatigue is going to come in. So you've got to think a little more creatively and you've got to plan those out. Bigger audits may take multiple 2 or 3 hour sessions that you might have to schedule over even 1 or 2 week time frame, right? And so that's all part of the planning and the process. And how do you want to set those up? I'm going to move the box over here. I can't. It's in the way here. Okay. So when you talk about now preparation on the execution side, let's see, what's it say here? Oh, the first thing is you want to set up these pre-meetings with the suppliers. I mean, you do that anyway. You have your opening meeting, but this is a pre-meeting to your opening meeting. And it's really to go over all the things we just talked about on the right, the technology, the who. It's not just going to be historically what you would have done is maybe share your audit agenda and talk through that and just get, when you're on site, here's what we're going to do. And it's much more detailed now with the technology and the tools and the timing, the sessions. So there's more things you need to put in place for a preparation standpoint. Facilities maps and org charts, a lot of times you do that again already, but especially if you're doing qualification of a new supplier. The facility maps really help you in the org charts to do the preparation in much more detail. Now you have a better idea of if you are going to do a virtual tour, if you will, and start to tape that or video that. The map helps you walk through that and in the prep meeting with the supplier, understand where you may want to place maps so that you can view final testing if that's what you want to do, or what areas of the facility you really want to focus on, right? We talked about document sharing as part of the preparation. The best thing is, you can do is try and get advanced copies of the procedures you're going to be reviewing and auditing against early. In most cases, you've got your NDAs and the suppliers will be willing to do that. In some cases, they don't. And so that'll make the audit a little more challenging. And so where you have those cases where you can't get advanced copies, you'll want to make sure you put that extra time into the audit, not just the prep part, but the actual audit time, because it's a little more difficult to work through those documents remotely and go through the question and answer process. That's all a part of auditing, right? And then when you're going to do the facilities tour and the review, like we talked, just make sure that there's a couple options that you have. We've talked about the video. You can make that live. It can do walking. We've used iPhones. You don't have to get really elaborate with this, right? Other things, you can have them pre-recorded. So if you look at that facilities map and you understand the org charts and who the SME is for these areas, you can set that up with the supplier, and then they can, if you guys both agree, then they could do their own pre-recorded tour, if you will, and then send that to you. And the simplest form is, they can just take pictures, put it in a PowerPoint, and you can leverage that from a tour perspective. So you have choices, and I think it's whatever level of detail or intimacy you think you're going to want to need, depending on how long, or I'll just say short, you've had the relationship with the supplier. So how well you know them and their facility, right? One thing on the tour, when you start to get into it, is are there any restricted areas? And also, a lot of times, especially when you go over in the APAC region, you get multiple floors. And so you'll start out in one room and you may go down all the way to a basement. You may go up 2 or 3 floors. And if you're trying to do a video, if you're trying to do some teleconferencing or something, that's where you get interruptions in the stream and then the signal. So try to understand those early. And then you may want to set up separate staging areas on the different floors so that if you think that you're going to have interruptions, you already are trying to plan for those, and you'll just have a whole separate setup in those areas. And then that just goes to the time and efficiency around the network outages and the interruptions. We just had one today. This is a perfect example of what can happen, right? It was all taped. I tried it myself. It worked well. We sent it in. It worked good. Next thing you know, there was a glitch, and that's fine. That's going to happen. I mean, it's just the way things are now. Dogs walk in front. We have our cats. People come to the door. Phones ring. All those types of things happen. So just recognize those. Try to set the audit up to hopefully minimize those, and that's all part of the prep, is to figure those things out. Have backup plans, just like we did today. I got the presentation. We're going to share it, and we're off and running. So we're actually conducting the audit. Can you guys, I'll just read it off of here. So we're talking about, making sure the audit, you have the objective evidence here, right? So something you probably don't do today that you're going to need to want to do in the future is have recordings of your the audits, maybe recordings of just the facilities tours and things. This is, again, a good way of being able to demonstrate that objective evidence around what you did and how you did it. You want to leverage the online chat. I'm sure you guys are doing this already. You have your company meetings, you'll have QMRs, and to not interrupt either the presentations or the discussions, you have a chat window on the side. And so people want to have questions, or there's something while it's on, you need to request a document in this case. Use the chat rooms for that. And so the audit can still be going on and happening. and the people in the back room or however you're conducting the audit can go off and work and try and get those documents. When you whatever documents you review, and you should be doing this already, but you want to make sure that you list the title, the part number, the version, maybe the SME. Just be that much more diligent on documenting with this areas, right? When you're auditing purchasing controls, you're auditing design controls, you're looking at their calibration. These are the documents you reviewed while looking at these sections, and make sure you have evidence of that. And then, for the on-site inspections, if those are required, again, maybe it's a brand new supplier, maybe there's some risk that you think is very is significant, and you're just not comfortable. I know I've done I've done some sourcing over in the in Russia, over in Moscow and things, and you're going to new countries. You just aren't comfortable with just doing the virtual audit. So it's okay to set these up as maybe to do later. So you can look at your supplier, you can do the virtual audit, and maybe initially just onboard them at some status in your system other than qualified, I'll say. Maybe it's conditional. And to get them to qualified status, they actually going on site at some future date might be that requirement to do that. So don't think that you can't build that in. You may want to do a phased approach there. So if your procedures are like ours, we are allowed to use suppliers at a status other than qualified in some cases with the documented justification. And then we obviously would follow up to make them, get them to a qualified status at some future date, whether that's some correction or in this example, performing the on-site audit. So it still is an option. It may be a delayed option, something delayed that you would execute on, but still something you can build in or do. And so in closing, again, we've kind of been forced into this situation here to do more and more virtual audits. The recommendation, just like I mentioned right at the beginning, is to embrace it. I think it's something that we need to recognize as one of many new norms that all of us are going to be having to discuss and probably just utilize in the future, right? I recommend you don't treat it as something temporary. And there's some hidden benefits here too, right? So we travel all over the world. My travel budget is pretty extensive, and building these in actually helps me to identify some cost savings. Allows people to stay in the facility, in the building, or in this case, at home, but they're not having to be remote. And so now you've got them on site more. So there are some hidden benefits here to implementing this as well. And then challenge your IT groups, right? So we just talked about the technology. We talked about the suppliers and that the technologies may or may not be aligned. And just work with your IT teams to figure out how we can bridge some of those gaps, how we can continue to improve the connectivity and things, especially if you've taken the position like we have to build it in as a new norm. That, I think I'm ready for questions.
Thanks, Larry. I think we have time for maybe one or two questions. So one of them is, post-COVID, do you envision hybrid audits? If yes, what components are most efficiently addressed virtually? What components need to be on site?
Yeah, I think like I mentioned, right, the on-site aspect is, at least for me personally, is that touching and feeling and meeting the people. Seeing them, it's almost like an interview from the person's standpoint if I don't have a prior relationship with them as a supplier, but then just doing the physical verification of the equipment, the location, how they store their product, EH&S, just the surrounding logistics around their location and getting to and from and traffic and those different patterns. So those are things that I try and consider as I'll say requirements for if you want to build a hybrid program where you would want to utilize to do the on-site and then the more comfortable you are with the supplier, or maybe even if they're new, but you've got maybe other suppliers in that area and some of these other factors are already understood, then yeah, you could probably leverage more of the virtual aspect.
So what are, and this is the last question, and I know that we're running over, but in light of what happened with the video, so what are some of the best practices for documenting a remote audit that will be subject to either the FDA or the EMEA's review?
Yeah, good question. So the first one is, you don't want to, it's just, if you're thinking about your current audit and you have your audit checklist, I'll just say, and you're looking at all the different elements and you're auditing these areas, make sure that you're documenting the, like I mentioned, the procedures, and not just the name, it's the title, it's the part number, it's the version. And then I go so far as to actually list the SME who's responsible in that area. And so then you can have your facilities map, you can have your org chart, you can have that person and the procedure, and you start to be able to build that picture. So when the FDA or somebody comes in, you have all those nice linkages together, and the auditors start to get more comfortable with the level of documentation and how that relates back to that facility and things, right? So
Larry, I want to thank you very much. Obviously, we ran into
yeah, no
a
worries.
technical problem. I really appreciate you jumping in and answering it. And there are some other questions, but we will, of course, get those questions answered in writing later. So thank you very much, Larry, for a great talk.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity.